Today we're here to celebrate our Canadian pride by sharing a collection of stories from Canadians who have played a role in honoring our military, both past and present, on Spotlight Features. Stories of Service. Welcome to beautiful British Columbia. We're hosting the show from Esquimalt Harbour, home to the Royal Canadian Navy's West Coast Fleet. In the spirit of respect, we acknowledge that we are filming today on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen peoples, more specifically, the home of our neighbors, the Esquimalt and Songhees nations. Hello, I am Sailor First Class Charmaine Davison-Peer, a naval communicator currently posted to Canadian Forces Base Esquimalt. I joined the Royal Canadian Navy in 2014 to become something bigger than myself, and have had the pleasure of working with communities at home and abroad throughout the 8 years I have been in. Now to our first story. I am standing on the site of the former Yarrows shipyard, where HMCS Alberni was built and launched in 1941. Sadly, the ship was torpedoed and sunk by a German U-boat in August of 1944, but the spirit of the ship lives on in a museum located in Courtenay, BC.
These pictures here, I think, probably could go over a little bit.
Okay.
I was born and raised in Jackson, Wyoming, which has a very rich pioneer history, and it was just part of my growing up to be fascinated and curious about those who came before us. I became familiar with the Alberni on a trip from the mainland to Vancouver Island in November of 1999. While on the Queen of Alberni ferry, I noticed that there was a painting next to the bookstore, and it was a painting by Pat Burstall, who painted the HMCS Alberni. And under that was the plaque that described the sinking of the Alberni with the loss of 59 of her crew. And so I ended up going home. I stayed up all night thinking about this, and by morning I had created a small website for my own curiosity so that I could learn about who these men were, get their stories. I could look up at the battles and things like that, but I wanted to know who were these young men, where did they come from? And so I created at that moment the Alberni Project. From that point on, the project started taking on a life of its own. And now we have this wonderful small museum here in Courtenay, and our stories that we have here are about more than just those 59 men. We've expanded our stories to include those from the First World War to the Second World War to Afghanistan and everywhere in between. This is just an example here of what people bring us in as part of their family history and that they want to share with others to tell the story of Canadians of war. 1939, December, Vancouver Daily Province. Wow. So from this initial inspiration of this one painting, we now have this internationally recognized memorial that has been established to tell the stories of Canadians, anyone whose lives are affected by war. And we have been able to do so because of all of the tremendous artifacts and personal belongings of people to tell the personal stories. We are more of a story museum than we are a military museum. We can only grow if we know where we came from. We can only branch out and prosper as a society if we know where our roots are. And for me personally, to know why we are able to live in a free country, why we are able to be the people who we are, really goes back to the people who came before us. And just as importantly, the people in the future, the children of the future, grandchildren, they will be looking at us as the roots for their society. And maybe that's why I do this museum. It's not only for remembering those who came before us, but also for those who will come after us.
The Canadian Armed Forces are one of the largest employers in Greater Victoria, with over 4,000 military personnel and over 2,000 civilian employees. At times, many of those 4,000 military personnel are at sea, including the seamanship specialist of the Canadian Armed Forces, the Bosuns. But when Bosuns are ashore, they spend their time instructing junior sailors. That's where we met up with Sailor First Class Zach Weingarten.
We're going to be doing slow boating drills. I'm going to have you come up. We're going to nose into the pole, and we can do helm, port, and starboard to walk around the pole. Remember, as soon as you touch that pole, you're going to see it start to squish up. That's when you're going to on throttle, and that way you won't bounce off and stick to it. My name is Sailor First Class Zach Weingarten, and I'm a bosun for the Royal Canadian Navy. Perfect, nice and slow. As a bosun, when we're ashore, we'll often be utilized as instructors. Some of the things that we instruct are NETP. Right hand target, one hand. Sea survivals. Almost there, 10 feet. As well as small boat operations. So then we'll come out to the pole and we're gonna station keep. Roger. Remember, you can utilize your bowsman if you want to give you the distance to the pole. So I grew up in Tillsonburg, Ontario. It's a small farming community located southeast of London, Ontario. Growing up there was like a lot of times we're just playing in the woods, playing in the fields, dirt biking, hanging out with friends. QHM Ops is STC Rib 1, conducting operations in Esquimalt Harbor, over. I never got to leave Ontario until I joined the military, so I never seen the ocean until 2018 when I got out to Esquimalt, BC, and I don't think I'll ever leave the ocean. Show check away. Even handsomely. My whole life I've definitely just wanted to help people. After high school, I studied police foundations at Humber College. So my intent initially was to be a police officer, and it was to help protect and serve the public. Avast! Show hooked on. Being in the Navy allows me to do that, and it's a lot broader. It's not just the public, it's all of Canada as a whole. Let me know when the last bite's on deck. You're gonna walk the line over to the edge, throw it over the side. So when I'm instructing and I see that there's students that are struggling, I believe in the crawl, walk, run, sprint. Keep going, he'll come. Just keep it a nice positive environment. Just talk them through the steps. Push with your legs, both your arms. If they start to make mistakes, I'll let them make the mistakes, and then I'll correct them on the mistakes. And then once it starts to come down on you, arm up, arm up. Before joining the military, I never imagined myself being a teacher or instructing in any which way. Looking back at it, in high school, I couldn't even stand up in front of a classroom and give a presentation. I would just get the jitters, the shakes. It just wasn't for me. Pull! So the military has definitely given me that tools in the toolbox, the skills, knowledge, and confidence to help me be able to teach and instruct. Calm your nerves, get that nice breath down. Inhale, exhale, and the exhale, pull the trigger, hold, and slowly release. It's really rewarding, and it's an awesome experience.
Up next, we meet an author and blogger in Invermere, British Columbia, who is helping to ensure that the legacies of 28 veterans of the Second World War are not lost with time.
It's so important to record their contribution and their sacrifice. For years, I'd had the idea to write a novel about a woman in uniform. And while I was still working as a journalist, I was interviewing veterans and gathering research for my novel. And then I realized as time went on that I was collecting some fantastic material that had never been recorded. Eventually, I just amassed such a body of research that I decided to publish them first online and then into a book. One of the things that really inspired my wartime interest was an old scrapbook that my mother kept during the war. She cut out the front pages of the Star Weekly magazine and pasted them into this scrapbook. My heart glowed when I looked at them, and I was especially interested in the ones of women in uniform. I think in the beginning I was just attracted to the glamour of it all, but of course as time went on I realized, especially after I'd started interviewing female veterans, what an important role they really had played. One of the interesting things I discovered when I was doing my research is how many Indigenous men and women served in the Canadian Armed Forces and how little recognized they were when they came home. I have Indigenous blood myself, so I thought it was really important to try to represent in the book some Indigenous family. And I found this one from Battleford, Saskatchewan, the Ballandines. They had 8 sons and all 8 of them served in the Canadian Army. And until I wrote about them, nobody had ever publicized or interviewed them about any aspect of their service. Every single one of the veterans in the book is one of my favorite veterans. They truly are members of the greatest generation.
For many service members, taking care of their comrades doesn't end when they leave the military. In Fort McMurray, a local veteran is using his own history to help keep the local Legion alive so it can support his brothers and sisters in arms.
As a leader from the military, it was always about taking care of your men and women. My primary task as an officer was making sure the welfare of my men and their families were taken care of. So this is a continuation of that service. So after 37 years of uniform service, I still had never joined the Legion. The Legion was always my grandfather's club. And so I never felt that I had a place in it. Now with COVID and the things that are occurring with businesses closing, I've seen a lot of Legions closing. And I began to realize that if I didn't become part of it, then I was part of the problem, allowing them to close. So that was the onus for me to look at putting a museum back in the Fort McMurray Legion, because it would give it that context and decor that it is a military place. There's history involved with it. This is the uniform of Captain Jim Myers. He's the man that inspired me to join the Canadian Airborne Regiment and become a paratrooper just like him. I've been all over the world, and while I was over there, I started collecting things that reminded me of my service and the location of the people that I was with. So the museum for me was kind of therapeutic. It was my history. It's something I could show my daughter, my children. Here's where I've been, here are some of the factors. But over time it grew to such a size that I needed a bigger building. And so with the Legion, it allowed me to put things out, more things, to help people understand our history. You can see that this is a collection where families have donated parts of their family history so that others can understand what men and women from our community have done, have gone off and returned to our community from. It has been a growth, a revitalization of our Legion. It gives me satisfaction to know that I was part of it, that there was a piece that I could put into it. After 37 years not feeling that I was part of the Legion, I now believe I am part of the Legion.
Up next, we introduce you to Ivan Sujimoto, who has a personal connection and passion to find the unmarked graves of Canadian soldiers who made the ultimate sacrifice fighting for our country.
When I find the grave of a veteran that is unmarked and find their story, so many of them were far from home, but they were in Canada alone and no one cared about them when they died. And I feel that's a tragedy because these men did give everything and they deserve to be remembered and honored. When I research graves, I look for military records, obituaries, death records, and if I can find a grave for a veteran that is unmarked, I then submit the application to the Last Post Fund. The reason that I started working on this program is my parents are both buried in the Field of Honor in Mountain View Cemetery. And I noticed that there were some gaps. So I asked the cemetery office about the gaps, and they explained that these people were veterans, but they didn't have markers. My father was a veteran in World War II, and he did not talk about his wartime experiences, because they were very, very traumatic. And it wasn't until just shortly before his death that he actually started talking about it. And those stories were so traumatic and so horrible. One of his many experiences was he was a guinea pig at the research station here in Alberta. And the things that were done to him there were horrible. And he suffered PTSD. It was undiagnosed. And that affected his life and our lives. It wasn't until shortly before his death that he actually started talking about those experiences. And I suddenly understood how terrible his life had been. And so in doing this, I am honoring his memory and his sacrifices. I believe that the veterans gave everything or were willing to give everything. So many of them came back with PTSD, which was not recognized in the early years. And these men deserve to be recognized and honored for the time immemorial. It is really important to me that is done.
In 1943, George Hope joined the military when he was just 17. A year later, he was sent to the front lines in Europe with the Canadian Scottish Regiment as our army fought through Holland and Germany. George is now 97 years old and is one of the last World War II veterans in Southeast Alberta. Here is his story.
Occasional futile counterattacks still are attempted in an endeavor to break out of the hell on earth.
When I got into that war, it was all right for a while. But then I thought, holy cry, I wished I was home. There may be others that didn't wish that, I don't know. But I know lots of boys that said, sure wish this thing was over. I don't know, it just changes your feeling, you know, because you get a little more scared that, hey, I'm facing the enemy right here. Maybe it'll be my turn. Those things come through your mind. I guess prior to the war, why I kind of a kid, you might say. Oh, I was up around 6 foot, weighed about 180 pounds. And the Bren gunner got killed. And Murphy was our sergeant. He says, Hope, pick up the Bren gun. No, I said, I don't want that Bren gun. I says, they don't shoot at the riflemen as much as they do at the Bren gunner. Hope, pick up that Bren gun. Yes, sir. No two ways about it.
Stalag 6C near Meppen, Germany, its scenes of utter horror will forever be engraved on the minds of its liberators.
Out of all the horrible things that I saw during the war, I think seeing people hungry was what affected me most. I know because we liberated POW camps. God, they were skinny and never had any clothes to speak of. The way the people were treated in there. Seeing the children and the grown-ups and nothing to eat or very little to eat, and then give them a chocolate bar, or, well, thank you, but what is that, you know? Give them food and how they thanked you. The same thing, it just made you feel so dang good. After the war was over, I actually hoped there was no more wars, but especially no more world wars. I don't wish that on a soldier at all. He's a soldier because he wanted to go into the army, and if he's called on into a conflict, why, he's there. But I hope that they could just do duties such as helping in floods or disasters, let's say. I find myself on Remembrance Day taking time to remember the special times I had with soldiers and others I met during the war. I remember those who didn't come back, remember my friends didn't come back, remember how women and children were hungry. Unfortunately, they were there where the war was.
It is essential to share the stories of war and service, but it can be difficult without glorifying these tragic events. One former British soldier made it his personal mission to strike that balance, informing Canadians about their military heritage honestly so that the stories of those who paid the ultimate price are not lost.
You get people coming around and going, I didn't know. So I spend an awful lot of my time educating Canadians about their own history. It's ironic, isn't it?
Who's Gabriella Princip? You don't know? He's the guy who sparked the First World War.
Hi, my name's Kevin Hicks. I now live in Saskatoon, but I'm actually English born, and I'm a retired British soldier and a police officer from just outside of London, who has become somewhat of a historian.
We were given some bullets recently.
Nowadays I can lecture on the Roman army to the rise of Hitler. I ended up for quite a long time in Belfast at the height of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, which it just changes you forever. It's left a stain on my soul, what I saw there. And then I was sent out to Cyprus. My best friend unfortunately was killed, and I thought, I've had enough of the army. I've done me 9 years plus. My family have been coming to Canada for well over 100 years in dribs and drabs, and I never thought I'd ever leave England. But my eldest son, after he'd finished in the armed forces, Afghanistan and all of that, he settled here for better work, better life, and we used to come just to visit him. And we just fell in love with Saskatoon. I came to join the Legion, and somebody upstairs said, have you been downstairs? So I came down, and straight away I thought this would be a place where I could feel at home. And that's the thing with the old PTSD, isn't it? I'm safe down here, I feel at home. It's kind of a movie from my past and you forget that you were that guy. My wife and I both volunteer at the Saskatoon Museum of Military Artifacts, and the two biggest things in there is the First and the Second World War. But this is a perfect trench. If you look at the photographs, especially of Passchendaele, the trenches weren't as good as this, but it's a fantastic representation. It's just picking out the individuals, and we make sure that memory stays alive, and that's my kick. That's what I get out of it.
Just take a picture of me holding it.
Why? This is the thing. Why? I just told you that's killed thousands of Canadians and Brits too.
And whenever we talk about the weapons, like, you know, some of the German pistols of the war, they say, wow, this is incredible. I say, yeah, how many children did it shoot through the back of the head? And that's my angle, is kind of deglorifying it.
And I hate it. I really do. My Uncle Albert was killed in Normandy. He was machine gunned down.
My uncles and grandparents who survived the Second World War used to sit round the fire and talk about what they'd been through. And I'd be sat on the knee and I'd be listening. Then I would listen to my father when he was in the army. I think Canada is one thing, it's complacent. And it shouldn't be. It's a wonderful country and it's got an awful lot to offer. And I sometimes feel like, you know, you want to shake somebody sometimes, like, wake up to what really is going on in the world.
These guys from the First World War, they didn't know what shell shock was. They could see it all around them.
I had a most incredible opportunity out on the Somme battlefield. I was doing something for the British Legion. I was in full First World War gear, educating people as to what had happened on the battlefield. And a coach pulls up a great big bus, and it's got 11 old men on it who were actually fought on the Somme. The leader of them stood up and he shook my hands and he says, thank you. And then he threw his arms around me and he hugged me tight and he whispered in my ears. And he says, we'll all be dead soon, but it's people like you, Kevin, you're not going to forget this, are you? You're not going to let it rest. And I says, oh no. The reason we've got this freedom now is because of those guys. We're here by the grace of other people.
We don't ask much from you civilians except one thing. If we are killed, remember us. If we are wounded, take care of us.
As a current serving member of the Royal Canadian Navy, it has been an honor for me to share these stories with you. Thank you so much for joining us today, and to view more stories of Canadian heroes, please visit shawspotlight.ca or follow Shaw Spotlight on social media.
This is just an example here of what people bring us in as part of their family history and that they want to share.
Just like yesterday, we're going to be doing slow boating drills. I'm going to have you come up, we're going to nose into the pole, and we can do helm, port, and starboard to walk around the pole.
Because these men did give everything, and they deserve to be remembered and honored.
We don't ask much from you civilians except one thing. If we are killed, remember us. If we are wounded, take care of us.